here with my trusty good old Pegaso, and today I would like to show you the 5 top maintenance checks, the non-negotiable ones that everyone should be able to do and should definitely do, particularly before a long distance motorcycle trip, to ensure the best enjoyment of the motorcycle and the experience, as well as very important, the safety on the road. These are basic checks, really mostly very easy to do, which definitely any good mechanic would do on your motorcycle when you take it in for a service. But particularly if you are maybe interested in doing your own service of the bike, whether you're interested in knowing more about your motorcycle, maybe if you are a beginner in this field and you want to learn more, then definitely this video is for you. So let's get started with the first thing to check. Okay, so a very important thing to know about your bike before embarking on a long distance trip is the state of your brake pads, for sure. This is normally very easy to check, and I'm just going to demonstrate how I check on mine. On my bike there is no window in the brake caliper, which actually allows me to check them without removing the caliper itself. Normally these windows are found on the back of the caliper. On other models can be found here, and they allow you to with maybe a torch check the state of the pads. Mine doesn't have, so I'm gonna have to remove it, which is normally a very simple job. And in my case I just have to remove these 2 big bolts here. Okay, once they are removed, it's just a matter of sliding this out. Just wiggling it a bit free. And here we go. So this is how I'm able to see the state of my brake pads. Now, I'm not sure how much you can see, but the actual pad is this little step here between the metallic support and the actual material that gets in contact with the disc, with the brake disc. So in my case I seem to have roughly 1 millimeter from on each side, which is like borderline really. These will probably not even go another, I would guess, 200-300 kilometers before needing to be changed. So here you can see what the used one, pretty much almost finished, looks like, and what the new one look like when you look at them sideways, at this angle. So now I'm going to substitute them, and I'll be definitely happier afterwards. Right, so like I did on the front, I just removed my rear brake pads, and so I'm glad I have new ones, which look very different, as you can see. Okay, now for the next tip. A very important thing to check before embarking yourself on a long distance trip with your bike is the state of your final drive. In particular, I'm going to focus on the chain system, which is the most common among bikes. And basically you just want to make sure of a few things relative to your chain. I want to show you what I'm going to do on my chain. The first thing is just a general inspection in terms of how clean it is and how well lubricated it is. Okay, What you're going to check also is the slack of the chain, so how loose it is. And finally, you will probably have a look at the state of wear of your sprockets in particular, not really the chain itself. Okay, so the first thing, you just want to have a look at the chain, just to make sure that it looks, clean and is not completely dirty, as well as having a look whether it's properly lubricated. Okay, in my case, mine needs a little bit of lubrication, which is what I'm going to proceed to do. I actually used to have, I don't know if you can see it, so-called Scott Euler system. It's a great system when it works. Mine stopped working few thousand kilometers ago, so I just left it on because I couldn't be bothered to remove it, but I need to do the lubrication of the chain manually, as usual. Now, I use a fairly unconventional lubrication method because I actually use the Scott Euler fluid. This is Scott Euler fluid. This is the fluid that would normally go inside of the Scott Euler system. So I just packed, before leaving for my trip, a small quantity in a little vase like that. It's completely tightly closed, so it doesn't go anywhere. Very easy to pack. You can see it's very small. And then I also have a syringe, very old syringe. I use it for many different small works around the bike, mostly lubrication work. And what I do basically is just ensure, first of all, that my wheel is slightly suspended from the ground through the use of, I specifically use my tire levers under the center stand, otherwise the back wheel would touch the floor. And then put the bike in neutral, and then you can just turn the wheel and your chain moves. So what I do is simply spray it slowly while I turn the wheel. So I found this solution. This is as big as it is. This one you can put somewhere else. I normally keep in my tool tube. This one I keep under my seat. And this amount lasts me for more than 1,000 kilometers. So it's very good. Now the chain is lubricated and it's clean, and this is the first thing you have to make sure of. This ensures that your chain and sprockets are long-lived. If you keep it dirty and not lubricated, they will last a lot less. The other thing you have to check about the chain is the slack, okay? This is the slack. Basically, normally it's done from the most central point between the rear and the front sprocket, which is roughly here. And then here you just check how much the chain is, let's say, wobbling. The chain has to wobble, okay? The chain cannot be completely tense and tight. But at the same time it shouldn't be too loose, okay? So the wobble needs to be just right. Now I cannot tell you exactly what is the right let's say chain slack for your bike, because every bike has got slightly different dimensions, specs, etc, etc. So this is something that will normally be indicated somewhere on your bike, often on the bike itself, but definitely it will be indicated in your bike manual. So just make sure that it's always at the right slack, because if it is too tight, well, the chain can just simply snap. It's not a very common occurrence, but it can. On the other hand, if the chain is too loose, well, if it's too loose, what can happen is that the chain, through acceleration and deceleration, it has some side movements, it might actually come off from one of the sprockets, either the rear or the front, and that's also not very pretty. Finally, the wear of your sprockets. It's not very easy for me to show you my sprockets, but I will try anyway, at least the rear one. You can see there, my sprockets are still in fairly good condition, okay? You will know whether your sprockets are not in good condition by looking at them, and just have a look at this image that I'm showing you right now. This kind of gives you an idea of what a good condition sprocket looks like and what a very worn sprocket also look like. If your sprockets are too worn, change them. Change them, and change normally also the chain at the same time. Both sprockets and the chain, always a good idea to change them all together as a whole. Okay, so for the next now. Really important thing to check on your bike when you are either preparing for or you already are on a long distance trip is the state of your suspension. So you have the forks, front forks, as well as the rear shock. Now, suspension is very important because obviously if they are in optimal condition, they will guarantee that you have optimal control of your motorcycle. So in particular with the front forks work with oil in them in most cases. Now there are seals, I will show you. There are seals on this side. So this is the inner tube, this is the outer tube, and there are normally seals on the inside of the outer tube, which ensure that this oil doesn't come out, and this oil should never be coming out of your forks. So always a good idea to do a quick inspection on your fork to make sure that there is no oil whatsoever on the inner tube, or maybe just smudged around the outer tube where it connects to the inner one. If you see that there is any oil around, any oil leaks, well, that's a very clear sign of the fact that your oil seals need to be replaced. And these oil seals are definitely one of those perishable items on your bike, and will have to be changed because a leaking oil seal is potentially very dangerous. What can happen in some cases, in really, let's say, in cases like quite extreme cases, is that your oil seal leaks so much that some of that fork oil actually ends up leaking onto your brake disc. I'm just gonna let you imagine what can happen then. And obviously the handling of your bike will be affected because now there's not enough oil in maybe one or maybe both of your forks, and this will obviously impair the control on proper control of your motorcycle. As far as the rear shock or shocks, if you have more than one, go, it's a bit difficult for me to show you. On my bike I do have an aftermarket one. It's really hidden in there. You can always check the bottom part of the shock. It's really hard for me to show you right now, but you know, same thing applies. It's much harder for a rear shock to be leaking, and in most cases if a rear shock is leaking, the best thing to do is just to get it replaced altogether, the entire thing. In some cases they can be rebuilt, but it costs almost as much as buying a new one. So for rear shocks, if you see any leaks, you can just replace it. The other thing with the suspensions is that in most cases, definitely the rear shocks can be adjusted. So you should probably spend some time doing a little bit of research in terms of how to adjust your rear shock. Of course, in many of the modern bikes, you can do everything electronically from your handlebar controls. In the older bikes, such as these ones, you normally can dial it in manually. Just spend some time, make sure that your shocks are adjusted for the type of load you will be carrying, because this will definitely optimize the way your motorcycle handles. In some cases, with the more, let's say, advanced front forks, you can also adjust the front forks. And same thing there, adjust the front forks for the type of riding and the type of load you will be carrying. But the most important thing, as far as the forks go, and it's very easy to check, visual inspection of the front forks. If you see any oil on the forks, you have to change the seals. Don't go on a trip. Don't go riding pretty much anywhere if there is oil leaking off from your forks. Another really important thing to be aware of when it comes to your motorcycle, and applies to most vehicles, is the state of your tires. Your tires are what virtually separates you and the motorcycle from the ground. It's the only thing that actually touches the ground. So your tires being in the best possible condition will definitely increase your safety as well as your enjoyment of the riding. Now, in terms of the tires, there are three main things that I would like to point out. The first one is the tire pressure. The second one is the tire wear, so how much they've been used. And the third one is the age of the tire. Okay, these are the three main things that I think one should be aware of. So let's start with the first, the pressure. The pressure needs to be right. If the tire is too deflated, you run certain risks, for example of bending a rim if you take a big pothole on the road. And if the tires are too hard, the contact patch of the tire with the tar won't be wide enough, sufficient for you to have a proper handling of the motorcycle. So at each, let's say, load on the bike, there will be a recommended pressure for the back tire and for the front tire. I can't tell you what these pressures are because this depends on your motorcycle. So you're gonna have to check your manual, and on your manual it will definitely indicate what the correct tire pressure is supposed to be for the rear tire and for the front tire. They're normally slightly different. For situations in which, for example, you are riding solo and without luggage. For situations in which you are riding with a pillion and perhaps without luggage. And for situations in which the bike is fully loaded with you, pillion and luggage. A correct pressure also helps slightly with the gas mileage, so how far you can go with a certain amount of petrol. Now, the second thing to check about a tire is the state of wear. Tires have a certain mileage, a certain range that they can go, and after this, they're just simply too worn and they have to be changed. There's no other solution. This is very easy to check, once again, because you just have to take a look at the tire. I'm going to show you mine. This tire has roughly 17 to 18,000 kilometers on, so it's getting towards the end of its life. But it's still okay. I know that it's still okay because I can see that the thread on the tire, particularly on the part that normally gets most worn, which is the central area, is still around 3 millimeters in depth. Okay, so this is normally what you need to check. If the depth of the thread on your tire is at least 3 millimeters deep, that tire is still okay, okay? From the point of view of wear. Don't go around with a tire that is too worn, because this will seriously affect the ability of the tire to grip on the ground. I would say in particular when you find yourself on riding on wet ground, but in general. Of course, while you're inspecting your tire for wear, the other thing you want to look at is obvious damage. If you see that on your tire there are some obvious small cuts or similar thing, well, that's probably a good idea to just change that tire and replace it altogether, particularly if you are embarking yourself on a long trip. The third thing about the tire, as I mentioned earlier, is your age, tire age. This is an interesting fact. Not everyone is aware of this, but tires also have an expiration date in a sense. Even if that tire hasn't been used at all, or it has very little mileage on it, but it's old, that tire will have lost a lot of its original properties. So it will need to be replaced, even if it hasn't virtually been used at all. But on every tire you will be able to find the indication of the week and the year that tire was manufactured. And it's very, very easy to find. I'm going to show you now. So you must check your tire and look for the DOT acronym. And there will be a bunch of letters and numbers afterwards. The last 4 of this gap here, of this, let's say, string of letters and numbers, which starts with DOT, the last 4 will be the indication of the first 2 will be the week of the year in which the tire has been manufactured, and the last 2 will indicate the actual year. So in my case, I can see that this tire was manufactured on the 8th week of 2016. So from a point of view of age, my tire is still in pretty good condition, or let's say that just my tire is quite young still. Currently we are in 2018, so my tire is a little older than 2 years. I say that this is fine from the age point of view because the vast majority of tire manufacturers normally indicate the expiry of a tire around 6 years from the date of manufacture. So if your tire is older than 6 years, most manufacturers recommend that you just simply throw it away and get a brand new tire. Some manufacturers say that up to 10 years a tire is still okay, but after the 6th year it should be checked on a yearly basis by a professional tire shop. I would just say, probably, if your tire is older than 6 years, even if it still looks good, and you are gonna go on a very long trip or something like that, just change it again. You don't want your tires to give up on you in the middle of the highway at fast speeds, or perhaps in the middle of nowhere when it's gonna put you into trouble. Okay, so this is as far as tires go. For the next. So one more tip is your engine oil. So you need to be checking the engine oil level on your bike, and this is something that is probably a good idea to do regularly, every say 500 kilometers or so, because this is one of those things that ensures that your engine actually runs properly, that everything inside of it is well lubricated, and if your oil is in some kind of way not right within your engine, this can create catastrophic damage to your bike and seriously ruin your trip and your wallet probably. So the easiest thing that pretty much anyone who owns a motorcycle should be able to do on his or her motorcycle is check the oil level, in particular when embarking on a long journey. So checking the oil level is done differently on different models. In mine in particular is right here. Part of the frame of my motorcycle actually contains the oil as well, and I can just pull the cap out. I'll use a rag because it will be coming out with a little dipstick. Here we go. And on the dipstick there is normally an indication of minimum and maximum. Okay, so as you can see, I hope there is a minimum on this side and a maximum on this side. The oil level should obviously always be between the minimum and the maximum level. Okay, makes sense. So
how do you check correctly your oil level? Well, let's just say that first of all, your engine should be warm. So before you even open the cap, switch your engine on. Maybe you just come back from a drive, from a ride, or maybe just switch your engine on, let it idle for a little bit, bring it to operating temperature. So let it idle for 10 minutes, I guess, depending on where you are, what's the temperature where you are, and then switch the engine off. Okay? Now, the oil gets quite hot, so be careful when you do your check. Once the engine is hot at operating temperature, then you can unscrew the cap of your oil container, wherever it is located on your bike. Again, different models will have different place. You better learn where yours is in case you don't know. So unscrew the cap, and then normally the cap will come with some kind of a dipstick. Now the truth is that some models, some motorcycles, don't really have a dipstick system like this one, but rather have a small window on the case, on the side of the engine case, from which is a small little red circular window, from which you can actually check the oil level without even having to open the cap. Okay, so the reading, in order to do the reading on the oil level on your motorcycle, if you have a dipstick type of reading system, let's say, this is how you do it. Your engine is warm, you must then unscrew the cap comes out with the dipstick. It will be all smudged with oil because oil obviously was moving within the engine. You must then clean it. Once it's clean, you put it back inside of the hole where it belongs without screwing it. So you just basically let it go without screwing it, and then you extract it again. If you screw it in, it will alter your reading. Okay, so the reading needs to be done when it just comes out without screwing it. In my case, as you can see, that's where the level goes, which I'm going to clean it now. And you will see that it arrived roughly there. So I'm actually a little bit above max, okay? Which I guess is not ideal, but it's also not really that bad. It is very bad when it's below minimum. When it's below minimum, then you can start watering. Or instead of watering, just go get yourself some motorcycle engine oil that's suitable for your motorcycle and just do a little bit of a refill. Extremely important, check your oil level definitely before you go on a long trip, and if you also do some regular checks, definitely doesn't hurt. So that was the last basic, fundamental, non-negotiable maintenance check item that I had on my list. Again, in no way this is a comprehensive list of the things that you should check on your motorcycle before a long trip or in general. This was just the 5 top things that came to my mind that I definitely recommend anyone should be able to check on his or her own motorcycle before a long journey, for sure. In general, the more you know about your motorbike, this is at least my thinking, the more you know about your motorcycle, the better off you will be if, hopefully not, but if something goes wrong on the road, if you have a good knowledge of your bike, you will be able to hopefully find a way out of the trouble yourself. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please put them below. I will be happy to answer, and see you the next time.